Oh, yeah. It's all right as you can be.
He's in his 70s. One time he was celebrated birthdays, he said he was 72. Oh, life. I'm so tired. I slept at
You don't have to get quiet yet. We haven't started. We'll wait for the carol on. And if you haven't been here before, don't get in a hurry because there's always one last ding on the bell. So. But I need to tell our guests we are broadcasting live to Facebook. So don't say anything you don't want the 5 or 6 other people who watch us online to hear. So. Now we can start. Welcome to First Universalist of New Madison. It's really a supreme pleasure to have El Dorado visiting with us today. Hope to continue this on a regular basis, maybe even a little more often. When we get together, we always have a potluck, and that's always fun to do. So everybody is invited to stay. You're invited if you're just watching and want to come in and eat afterwards. You're invited to do that too. So, any announcements? Okay, seeing none, our opening words. Really good to have Derek with us. Not very often we get a real sermon, so we're always pleased to have that. Our opening words are in the hymnal page 429. Come into this place of peace, and let its silence heal your spirit. Come to this place of memory, and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power, and let its vision change your heart. Our prelude is the 23rd Psalm.
whatever. Maybe I can do better if I keep one eye closed. I think I should turn this over to Lloyd, because I'm not seeing.
I can do that.
You don't say it.
That's all right. Actually,
I'm sorry.
that's all right. A little worrisome because you just had cataract surgery, is that correct? And I'm going to have cataract surgery in 2 weeks, so you're scaring me.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Now I know.
Well, that's all right.
Now I know why they only do one eye at a time.
Okay, I got something else.
Do you want to do something?
I'll do something.
Okay. While we're getting set up here, our topic is Howard Thurmon, and Howard Thurmon is a pretty famous person. We'll talk about him a little bit. But before we get there, it is spring, and I don't know about you. The first signs of spring, you get it? I have not seen, this is on a more worrisome note, usually in the spring you see flocks, I mean like 50 and 60 robins in flocks. Has anybody seen that this spring?
I haven't read it.
I have seen 1 or 2 or 3 robins, but I have not seen flocks like I always saw before. Hopefully it's not another harbinger of impending global doom.
That's Robin back there looking fine and pretty.
That's the joke. That's the first robin of spring.
Robin, that's true.
Yes.
I think everybody knows this one.
Thanks, Lloyd. And thanks, Roberta. We really value live music. And I'm sure they've assured me that if I have any problems with my vision after surgery, it will improve in a couple of weeks. So I'm sure yours will get better as time goes on. Chalice lighting. Come in, be among us. This has a universal, if you have your copy there, come in, be among us. You're more than welcome to join in on that. To all who are yearning for community, Come in, be among us. To all who are just getting started, to all who long to go deeper, to all with tender places needing care,
Come in,
be among us. To the ones who have healed and have care to give, for those who are curious and hungry to learn, for those who know that they have something to teach,
Come in,
and be among us. For the ones who are just beginning to suspect they might nurture others becoming, to the young and the old, the innocent and the jaded, the fresh of mind and the deeply steeped, there is room here for each and every one. Come in and be among us. Our opening hymn is 262, Hosanna in the Highest. And as a side note, a Unitarian composer, a minister in Brooklyn, New York.
John Howard Lathrop.
John Howard Lathrop, a name that will go down in history.
You can Google it.
I'd rather have you do Howard. So, all right. You want to play?
I'll try again.
A few missed notes is not a problem.
Okay.
All right.
Our affirmation, Palm Sunday is found. Whenever we are serving a noble and unpopular cause with selfless devotion, holding to the ideals of truth and justice, whenever we are seeking to uplift the fallen, to comfort the brokenhearted, to strengthen and encourage the weak and hopeless, whenever we are working bravely and persistently in the face of abuse and criticism to establish more equitable relations in the world, whenever we are sacrificing our lives on behalf of what we believe to be the service of love for all humanity. That is Palm Sunday. Our children's story is a little history of Howard Thurmon. If it plays, we never know on the computer whether it's going to work or not.
Early 1900s, to the train station, Dade, Florida, an African-American boy is waiting to board a train north to Jacksonville. There he can pursue the high school education that is denied him in segregated Daytona. The disaster strikes. The boy's parents haven't given him enough money to pay for his ticket. Anxious and alone, the boy sits down and begins to cry. But then a stranger, a black man, approaches. After learning about the boy's plight, he pays the fare to Jacksonville. The boy on that station platform went on to become an outstanding high school student, valedictorian of his college class, and the first black dean of a predominantly white American university in Boston University's Marsh Chapel. His name was Howard Thurmon. Unknown, though, is the name of the generous man on the train platform, whom Thurmon said restored my broken dream. Thurmon's grandmother, a former slave, had often recited for Howard the mantra of a black preacher she heard as a child of the plantation. You are not slaves, you are God's children. His grandmother's words fueled his dream of community, nonviolent social activism, and unconditional love.
Howard Thurmon, who we'll hear more about today. If you couldn't hear that very well because the sound's not up, basically his parents sent him from the South. They managed to get the money together to get him in college in Boston. When he got to the train station, they did not give him enough money for the ticket. And some kind person gave him the remainder of the money and sent him up north. That made a lasting impression on Howard, as did his grandmother and great-grandmother who were slaves. A pretty remarkable person and a real mentor to Martin Luther King. Howard Thurmon is not much noticed these days, but he is definitely worthy of a deeper look, which we will hear today. All right, joys and concerns. As always, we start out with our sunflowers, Ukraine. Nothing is improving there. The war was not ended on the first day of the new administration. In fact, things have gotten worse. Now they are not only finding North Koreans fighting for the Russians, they are finding Chinese fighting for the Russians. The Ukrainians are being ganged up on in merciless numbers, and they still hang on to what they have. So we light a candle for those who support the Ukraine and for the Ukrainians themselves. We also light a candle every week for Israel. Palestine is in no better shape. So far, the Gaza Strip has not been cleaned out and turned into a mecca for rich people wanting to sun themselves on the beach. But that plan is in the works, supposedly. As outlandish and as unbelievable as that can be. Any other? Yes?
Like a candle lit for my aunt, Ms. Noni. She suffered a series of small strokes, and I'm not real close to her, but my mom is close to her. Noni is the wife of my mom's brother.
Okay. For medical healing and for acceptance and dealing with medical problems. As we all know, as we get to this age, sometimes there is no resolution. There is only forbearance. So we'll light a candle for that situation and for all others. I guess we'll light a candle for those who we haven't seen for a while. There's a number of people who are either traveling, working, don't know what the reasons are, but we miss their presence here. Hopefully they're able to join us online. And if not, Mike always sends out the survey, the program that we're going to be doing. They can read the scriptures and follow along with the hymn book. All right. Yes.
I went to my first volleyball game for my great-granddaughter, and I have 5 grandkids, and I have 2 great-grandkids and 2 kids, but it's those little kids that just seem to just bring you joy. Her mom is 31, and my first grandchild. So I have others in my family, but those little ones, I know Jesus talked about how special the little kids are, and how, I mean, I think Jesus was wise enough to know that they have a wisdom that the rest of us don't have. And he pointed us towards that wisdom. So that was a joy to be there. Your younger brother was there and told all of his friends, he was over playing in the playground, and he told all his friends that's my grandpa.
That is especially nice when you're recognized.
Yeah.
And I would light a candle for kids. There's such a contradiction. Kids are innocent, they don't know one from another, and yet, who are the cruelest people on the planet in elementary school? Who are the biggest bullies? Who are the kids? Who are the people who take advantage and make fun of the kids who are different? I don't know, that's some kind of genetic thing that goes on that maybe we have to learn not to be. I'm not sure, but it is a contradiction.
I have to agree with you. When I was that age, I was just a terrible.
I see whispers of that even today.
Oh, well, that's fair. I was a terrible little kid. Every now and then there's somebody in the family that's a little bit, misbehaving, and I always tell them, listen, somebody might be getting on you, but you wouldn't hold a candle to what I was like when I was your age.
Yeah, I will have to admit you conquered that magnificently. You are very, very, just every once in a while a little trace comes out, but it's only to show us what your past may have been. All right, one final candle. Yes.
I'd like to light a candle for everybody who supported us yesterday for our Easter fair, that came and helped us, and for Kenny, who stayed and scrubbed pots and pans for us.
Kenny is. We talked about that a little earlier about the lacking enthusiasm for the Kiwanis, every group that does good in the community seems to be lacking participation. It's getting harder and harder to find people people are locked into their phones and their computers and their TVs, and they don't have the loyalty toward their community, and I related this story earlier, there was a thing on the news yesterday in Vermont. They have actually started a potluck supper with no connection, just at the community center for people in the community who are lonely. And I'm thinking and telling the TV, every church has potlucks, and every church will welcome you into their community every Sunday morning. If you're lonely, what happened? How have we forgotten to go to church? I mean, it's happening to us right here in New Madison, El Dorado. There's people living in the town, but they don't go to church. And yet they complain about being alone, nobody to help them. They go to the county government. Well, let's not go into that. Actually, now that I've mentioned the county government, I'm going to light a candle for the state government. Do you know that there is a proposal in the state government to cut funding for public libraries? So I would encourage every one of you to write your congressman, to write the governor, anybody you can think of. And our Davidson complained that he got a raft of emails, but he said they were all form letters, so he wasn't paying any attention to them. So all of us have sent individual letters saying this is not a form letter, and then saying something individual. To cut public libraries is whatever. Okay. All right. The message, Palm Sunday, and Derek will talk to us about Howard Thurmon, and I hope I haven't taken up too much of his time.
There's always just enough time. Always. It's a joy to be in this pulpit and to have both congregations together again on Palm Sunday. And the fellowship hall looks beautiful, I will say to our hosts here. Thank you for inviting us up on this day. The reading appointed for today comes from the Gospel of Luke. As Jesus rode along, people kept spreading their cloaks on the road. And he was now approaching the path down from the Mount of Olives, and the whole multitude of disciples began to praise joyfully with a loud voice for all the deeds that they had seen, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven, peace on earth, and glory in the highest heaven." And some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, order your disciples to stop." He answered, "I tell you, if these people were silent, the stones would shout out." So in 1935, a young black preacher named Howard Thurmon served as part of an American friendship delegation charged with the purpose of promoting dialogue with college students in Burma, India, and Sri Lanka, all three at this time part of the global British Empire. While visiting the University of Colombo in Sri Lanka, a Hindu college professor confronted Howard. Because Howard was both black and a Christian minister, and as this Hindu law professor pointed out, Howard's ancestors were enslaved by Christians. Christians had also come to Sri Lanka and conquered it for the British Empire. So how, the professor asked, how can you follow Jesus when Christians bring slavery and conquest? And the whole event would have been lost to history, except that A, Howard took that question very seriously. He thought it was a good question. And he was a very gifted man who would rise to become a best-selling author and dean of the chapel at Boston University, and eventually founder of the Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples in Los Angeles, California, one of the first intentionally interracial churches to begin in the 1950s. And Howard spent a lifetime working on this question that captured his imagination. Why follow Jesus when Christians have been such eager participants in cruelties like slavery and imperialism? And what does Jesus have to say then to those who are living with their backs against the wall? Howard Thurman's initial thoughts were published in 1949. So he had 14 years between the incident in Sri Lanka and the publication of his landmark book, Jesus and the Disinherited. Beacon Press, the Unitarian Universalist publishing house, continues to be the custodian for the publishing rights of this book. And I'll point out, you see Howard paired here with Martin Luther King Jr. Howard was a generation older than Martin Luther King. But Martin Luther King Jr. carried in his briefcase at all times a copy of Howard Thurman's Jesus and the Disinherited. And I'll give you a quick introduction to what's in the book. Because Howard Thurmon was a black man who grew up in Florida, and his grandmother had been a slave. But Howard felt from a young age that Jesus had always had something very distinct to say to people who were oppressed. And to him, this was founded on 3 historical facts. 1, Jesus was a Jew, and as such he was part of a people deeply and historically engaged with the work of God and with the work of justice. 2, Jesus was poor, and the vast majority of the people of the world live in poverty, with all the hunger and want that comes with it. 3, being both poor and Jewish, Jesus lived under a constant threat of violence at the hands of people, the Roman Empire, who could commit all manner of brutality against him and those who are like him. In a sense, Howard thought, Jesus wasn't that different than growing up black in Florida before World War II. So what did Thurmon observe Jesus saying to those who have their backs against the wall? What part of his teachings were so amazingly relevant? I'm going to condense 112 pages of this landmark book into a few minutes of spoken ministry, which does not do it justice. It actually is a good read. I recommend it. You can easily get your own copy from Beacon Press. To Howard, Jesus was God's messenger to oppressed people. And Jesus had teachings, according to Howard, that addressed what Howard called the 3 hounds, hounds like dogs, that pursue the oppressed: fear, deception, hatred. Fear, the first of those hounds, that emotion that those with less power feel in the face of the abuse of those who have more power. Fear, which is paralyzing, which promotes helplessness, which demoralizes people. And then there is deception, the second hound. Both the deceptions of the powerful and the deceptions of those who are oppressed. The powerful, Howard said, have the ability to spread lies about oppressed people. They say they're stupid, they're diseased, they're inherently dishonest, they tend to be violent criminals. These are the things that the powerful say about the oppressed. Now, some among the oppressed will believe those lies told about themselves because those lies get repeated over and over and over again until they become conventional wisdom. And then there are the lies Howard observed that the oppressed tell in order to survive. Thurmon likens it to a bird that fakes a broken wing to deceive a predator and lead it away from the nest. But deception, he notes, is over the long term corrosive to healthy relationships. It spreads distrust and resentment. And then the third hound, hatred. Not just the hate that powerful people can direct towards those who are oppressed, but also the hatred that oppressed people can feel about those who are hurting them. And this hatred, Thurmon observes, is soul-destroying. I'm going to go on a little tangent and tell you one of the stories that Howard recounts in this book. He discusses being on a train that is passing through southern states. And as such, while the train was in the south, he was required to sit in the colored people's carriage until it crossed into the north, and then he could get up and sit where he wanted. But while the train was stopped at a train station somewhere in Alabama, he was sitting with two other black girls sitting behind him, like 8 or 9-year-old girls. And they were looking out the window of the train at the parking lot, where two white girls were skating around on roller skates. And one of the girls behind him said, "Wouldn't it be wonderful if one of those girls fell and bashed open her head?" And Howard thought, what a horrible thing to come from the mouth of a child. And about another child. This is what hate does. It is soul destroying. Howard said that what Jesus taught that disables the three hounds is a teaching about love. Love of self and love of neighbor. Love of self that cleans away not just the fear that paralyzes, but which also cleans away the lies that people have internalized about themselves. Oh, you're black. Maybe I shouldn't go to college. Now it's a lie. He was smart enough to go and to excel. Love, which liberates us from hatred of those who have harmed us. Thurmon wrote, and I'm quoting here, "The religion of Jesus says to the disinherited, love your enemy, take the initiative in seeking ways by which you can have the experience of a common sharing of mutual worth and value. It may be hazardous, but it is worth it. You should do it." Howard Thurmon's world of imperialism and Jim Crow segregation has some unfortunate parallels relevant to our time. When I look around us at religious life in 2025, I see a Christian America where many have made unholy compromises with wealth and cruelty and violence. Some people are even okay with those things being conducted in Jesus' name. It's natural then for people to ask a question like the one that the Hindu law professor asked Howard Thurmon 90 years ago. In 1935, 90 years ago. How can you follow Jesus when his followers have done these horrible things? There is an answer that I have been giving for a number of years. There were a number of years before the pandemic when I was asked to speak to students at Earlham College about these issues. They were all students in the Quaker Fellows program. But they could see the reality with their own eyes. Christians reveling in materialism and acquisition, building their mansions with cheap labor while demonizing the poor as lazy. Discrimination against women, justified as a supposed plan from God where men are supposed to be in charge of women. Gay, lesbian, and especially transgender people slandered and demonized from pulpits and in the halls of private Christian schools and colleges. Christians willingly turning a blind eye towards police brutality, government-sponsored abductions, and state-sponsored torture. And those students have asked me, why participate in religion if this is what religious people do? Why? Because This was my answer. But I think Howard would agree. Because this situation is not made any better by us leaving religious life behind or leaving Jesus behind. Because what this moment requires is people who take religious life seriously, who can see the ways in which our culture has fallen short of basic ethical teachings of Jesus, who can take seriously the ways our religious cultures have failed, and who are committed to living better ourselves. Because we can be the beginning of the change that we want to see. As we transition into our time of dialogue, I'm going to ask us to return to words from the 3rd verse from John Howard Lathrop's Palm Sunday hymn, which he composed for the First Unitarian Church in Brooklyn, New York. And I'm going to go out on a limb and try to sing just a little bit. O first of many prophets, who came of simple folk to free us from our bondage, to break oppression's yoke, restore our minds to wisdom, make known the life, the way that leads through love and justice unto the peace-crowned day. One of the blessings at being at a church like this is that the message is not mine alone. It is shared with the congregation, with the insights that you have had that we can use to build one another up, the questions you have that can provoke us to go a little bit further, a little bit deeper. What thoughts would you share this morning?
Yeah, okay.
Get us started on. Get us going.
Well, I think it's interesting as you're going through this, and what you put your finger on through the past history, I think is why we are losing people coming to church or becoming involved at all in religion. And part of that problem is, first off, I've seen it in education. Education at one time, as I was growing up, and as most of us here at a certain age, the education was not necessarily job training. The education was about leadership, okay, and about becoming a leader within a group. If you recall, that's what it was all about, and that's why so many people became so-called worthless literature majors in college, because they recognized that all of that literature that they were reading, okay, was really an embodiment in practice through literature of the teachings of Christ. And that was the whole point all the way through. But that's changed. That's gone now. Okay? In order for most universities to survive, you got to choose a major for a good tech job when you graduate. Beginning and end of story. That's it. And that's the one thing that I see in all of this is that what we should be doing, or what some of us in here recognize, is that this is supposed to be a community. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't work that way, does it?
And people are whole people. They are body and mind and spirit and all of those wonderful things together. It is very telling, even at a liberal arts college like Earlham, there are departments that have been eliminated.
Yes.
For example, when I was preparing for the ministry there, There was a German department. There's not anymore. But there is one for, lack of a better word, sports training. It's very job-oriented. And to be a full human being, a full citizen, to just even at some level have an idea that you are part of a huge conversation that goes back thousands of years. What is true? What is good? What makes human life worth living? How do I connect rightly and well to other people? How do I make those connections? When I was in school, the big issue was they were trying to make us into people who could be active citizens in our community. You know, people who would volunteer and work and, I don't know. Yeah, but when it focuses narrowly on do a job, and that's all we care about, that you can do a job.
Well, and I think there's one other problem that is kind of touched on as you were talking, and I haven't read Howard's book, but I am familiar with him, mostly through the civil rights movement. But is that my daughter's a prime example, frankly. And most of the people, the children that I've dealt with, very few of them are associated with a congregation. They may have been raised in that, they may not have been. But I think one of the major problems when you listen to them and you start talking, they're interested, and this was the interesting part of the Gospels. When Christ was, he wasn't focused otherworldly. He was focused on this world.
Yep.
Okay, but what happens is if you go to a Methodist church, as I was raised in a Methodist church, or you go into a Catholic church or what have you, that's almost ignored because you do that so that you are the good shapes of God, okay?
The otherworldliness of it.
It's the otherworldliness of it. And so a young person who's dealing with the world trying to come up has really nothing to grab onto when you have that focus.
And if you were raised in certain settings, it can also begin to take on a pie in the sky kind of feel.
Exactly.
And that was one of the things that Howard was not so fond of, because he said there was a stripe in his own community that he could trace back to slave preachers, which was, well, don't worry about here now. You'll get your pie in the sky in the great by and by. And he was like, no. Jesus wants you to be concerned about the here and now. Like, the here and now matters. We're living here and now. Yeah, there's so much more, and there's complicated reasons why younger people, I mean, some of it's irrelevance. Some of it also is betrayals. You can't get away from some of the financial and sex abuse scandals without that leaving a huge impression on people. As well as the fact there are just a bunch of people who are female or gay or lesbian who grew up in houses of worship where they were told that they were bad people. And why would you want to stick around for that? Mike.
Back to the topic of learning. I, as others, have shared this notion, asking the question, what's the purpose of learning? And then, what's worth learning? And if that's put in the context of material gain, which we've done today, particularly at the legislative level, in state colleges and universities, then it does lead to a more narrow focus. But as we've read in terms of classics, a learned person many, many years ago had read classics and Greek. Okay, they knew Latin, they spoke Latin, but more importantly, they positively influenced others through their learning, in a sense, if you will, leadership. I'm learned just about that much, but you too can be by doing this or this or this. But leadership now, warping from learning to leadership, leadership is also narrowly focused, just as learning is. Leadership is, how can I get them to do what I want? And that's partisan, and in this day and age, it's hyper-partisanism. And so, I'm not sure what the solution is, but I suppose if you were, quote, learned, and you got beyond, you were materially productive in society because you learned at the university or any technical school or whatever, what are you doing in terms of learning and helping others learn? Leadership. Nothing better for teaching leadership than an inspiring leader to teach others.
I think our culture has also mistaken the ability to command people as leadership. And just having the capacity to issue commands does not make you an effective leader. I'm mindful of a passage from the Tao Te Ching, and I'm not going to quote it completely or correctly, but it has the gist that when the master leads, nobody knows that she is doing it. The people accomplish things and say, we did it ourselves. The notion being that there is this inspiring, organizing, facilitating thing that goes on behind the scenes. And it empowers people to do it themselves.
I just want to add, sitting here, and I think about this quite a bit. I used to wonder, why was Mandela so effective? I mean,
Nelson Mandela.
Yes, and if you think about that, this man spent most of his life in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but there was one thing that he did that you don't see much today. When he spoke about his experience, he related that directly to his audience.
Oh yeah, that is the gift of a very gifted, and I will say, having spent enough time in theological school, one of the things I realized is that part of the reason that the teachings of Jesus cross cultures so easily is that he uses a lot of very basic stories. Even in a religiously illiterate culture, somebody has heard the concept of the Good Samaritan. They've got a notion of what the Good Samaritan story is. Even if they can't quote it, they've got a notion. That's how well the story travels. Or he uses very basic stories involving nature. The lilies of the field neither toil nor spin, but not even King Solomon looks as beautiful as this thing. And if you've seen a lily in bloom, you might agree. So I'm going to transition down from the pulpit, and
one of the things that I think that Muslim professor missed is that people that follow a religion, and not necessarily the guy that started it, and his ideas, but they just go to church and they do bad things. That's not just Christians.
Oh no, that's
You seem to miss that. I mean,
he was looking at it from an angle of power, where he as a Hindu in Sri Lanka had found himself conquered by Christians who came from the outside, and who said that they were doing it on behalf of Christianity. Now, put him in a different time and place. I'm not sure how fond he would be of contemporary Hinduism in India.
Absolutely.
Maybe not.
Absolutely.
And, we can even see fundamentalist movements in just about any faith tradition. And when these things get wrapped up into concepts of conquest, the power equation changes. If we had more time, there's interesting historical work that looks at how many different religions behave one way when they're the oppressed smaller thing, when they get hold of government power, they end up usually trying to oppress somebody. And it doesn't seem to matter whether it's Christianity or Hinduism or Buddhism or Judaism or Confucianism. That wedding together of temple and government power usually plays out badly.
Unless anybody be worried, we have plenty of time.
There's always enough time.
Yes, we are building community, and nobody will begrudge us an extra 5 or 10. If we had a certain person speaking here for 80 minutes or 90 minutes, that might be a problem, but not for what we're doing.
If I go that long on a sermon, you need to be medically examined.
I think, we're not in danger of that. It's the question and answer that adds the time, and that is what we want to encourage. That's really what gives the character to the Unitarian Universalist Church, and I'm assuming some others, is that you are allowed to speak your mind. You are accepted, whatever your beliefs are. We all don't believe the same thing. We all don't expect to believe the same thing. But we respect each other's beliefs, and we want to hear what you think. All right, the offering, we're going to hear, and I've been accused, rightly so, of being too political from the top, from the front here, with what is going on, and I spared you that today because of everything else we have. But what we're doing is we are still patriots. We love our country. We don't always love everything our country does. We don't always love everything our country stands for or everything our government does, but we love our country. So we are going to hear "Oh Beautiful for Spacious Skies." If you know the lyrics, sing along. And as the offering proceeds, we have a fish offering and the local offering. The fish offering goes in the plate, and we are going to go ahead and pass these plates because there are more people here. It would create a traffic problem if everybody walked up. All right, "Oh Beautiful for Spacious Skies." Closing hymn is number 12, "O Life That Maketh All Things New." I say this for people from New Madison, what a blessing and what a joy it is to hear people singing in church. We are blessed with only one voice in our little group, and when he's not here, it's pretty lame. So it's really fun to hear, because I grew up going to church, and I grew up hearing a whole church, 100 people singing, and that is something that you maybe not realize at the time what a joy that is. All right, extinguishing the chalice is 708 in your hymnal in the back. For you shall go out in joy and be led back in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall burst into song, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Isaiah 55, and I'm sure you sang that as kids. That was a fun one. All right, let's see. I'm going to give you, I had to do something political. Anybody recognize this? This is now being promoted by the government. This is a head of you-know-who. It's the new pin that loyalists are supposed to wear. We are on the road to dictatorship. I have never heard it. You also probably are aware that we are going to have a 4-mile military parade for the 79th birthday through Washington, D.C. A 4-mile military parade, tanks and all. What is happening to our world? Okay, postlude. You'll never walk alone. service. The potluck is available for everyone. Our obligatory cowboy, actually horse picture is black cowboys. I'm sure you're aware 30 to 40, maybe even 45% of the cowboys in the 1800s out west were black. Something that's not been portrayed on American TV or movies. And for a news update, Curly is enjoying his retirement at my place, and Rebel and Chick Magnet both start racing next week, so fingers crossed. All right, have a good week. If you need anything, let us know. We're leaving our candle lit as usual for those who are not able to attend, and for those of you who have needs that you haven't had addressed, let us know if we can help. $75. That's pretty good. That is good.